I was being brought to set in a wheelchair. Like, I couldn't walk that far. So I had to tell everybody because I needed help. You know, I needed someone to help me stand, and I needed someone to help. I needed someone to help me to get there.
Applegate and Ed O'Neill spent 11 seasons playing daughter and father on Married with Children. What has come out in their own words since then, on her podcast, in red carpet interviews, and at some of the most emotional award show moment of the last few years, tells a story that needed no exaggeration to be remarkable. This is not a tale of secrets suddenly spilled or long-hidden scandal. It is simply what Applegate and O'Neill have actually said about each other, pieced together from years of interviews. And it turns out that's more than enough. Christina Applegate was 15 years old when she was cast as Kelly Bundy in 1987. By her own account, she almost didn't take the part at all. She has said she initially turned down the role because she found the original pilot script crude, describing it as toilet humor that she wanted no part of. Producers moved forward with 2 other young actors for the pilot, but when that version didn't work, they came back to Applegate and her future on-screen brother, David Faustino. This time, watching the Res Hot pilot, she found herself laughing despite herself and signed on. Ed O'Neill was already in his early 40s and an established stage and screen actor when the show began. Over the 11 seasons that followed, Married with Children became one of Fox's signature hits, running from 1987 to 1997 as the story of shoe salesman Al Bundy, his wife Peggy, played by Katie Seagal, and their 2 children, Kelly and Bud. What Applegate has said in later years is that her relationship with O'Neill went well beyond scene partners. On her podcast, Messy with Christina Applegate and Jamie Lynn Sigler, she introduced O'Neill by telling listeners she didn't quite know how to describe him, adding that he had essentially raised her, for better or worse, she joked, crediting and blaming him equally for who she turned out to be. She has been direct about why that mattered. She has said that during difficult periods in her personal life, including her mother's battle with cancer, O'Neill was someone who was there with her through all of it. The show itself was known for pushing television boundaries further than most network sitcoms of its era dared. It courted controversy by design, and Applegate, as Kelly Bundy, was often the character at the center of the show's most provocative jokes. Growing up largely on that set, from age 15 to 26, meant Applegate came of age inside an environment that was, by any account, unusual for a teenager. What she has described in interviews is less a story of overt protection scenes and more a portrait of steady presence. She has talked about keeping an emotional armor up during years when she was privately dealing with difficult family circumstances, and about O'Neill being one of the people who simply stayed present through it. Their rapport on set, by O'Neill's own description, was straightforward and professional. He has called Applegate a true pro to work with, someone whose scenes were always enjoyable to shoot. Katie Seagal, who played Peggy Bundy, remained close with Applegate as well, a friendship that has continued to show up publicly in the years since, including standing physically beside Applegate at major public appearances well after the show ended. One of the more well-documented chapters in the show's history involves a real advertiser boycott. In 1989, a Michigan woman named Terry Ricalta launched a public campaign against Married with Children after watching an episode she found objectionable, contacting advertisers directly and pushing for show's cancellation. Several major companies did pull their sponsorship in response. Fox and the show's producers faced real pressure during that period, and the controversy became national news. The show ultimately survived, and in the years since, cast members have referred to the controversy as something that, if anything, drew public curiosity toward the series rather than sinking it. It became a well-known chapter of the show's history, one that the cast has referenced with a mix of pride and humor in interviews over the years, framing it as an early test that the show's odd, unconventional family passed together. When Fox canceled Married with Children in 1997 after 11 seasons, there was no farewell special, no reunion episode, and, according to Applegate, not even a phone call. Speaking with O'Neill on her podcast decades later, Applegate said she learned about the cancellation secondhand, hearing about it indirectly through her own assistant's network rather than from anyone at the network itself. She said plainly that the show had ended without anyone from Fox ever calling to tell her. O'Neill told a similar story about finding out from strangers. He recalled being at a small bed and breakfast near his hometown when a newly married couple recognized him and thinking he already knew, offered their condolences about the show getting canceled, which is how he found out, from people he had never met, on what had started as an ordinary day. Both actors have also noted that the show never generated significant residual income for them relative to its popularity and longevity, something they discussed candidly and with some resignation on the podcast, comparing their situation unfavorably to shows that ended with much larger payouts for their casts. The lack of closure clearly stayed with both of them. Applegate has said outright that the ending deserved a proper send-off that never came. On August 10th, 2021, Christina Applegate posted a message to her fans revealing that she had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a chronic autoimmune disease that attacks the central nervous system and can affect mobility, balance, vision, and cognitive function. There is no cure. She wrote that it had been a strange and difficult journey, but that she had found real support from others living with the same condition, and asked for privacy as she adjusted to her new reality. The diagnosis had come earlier that year, while Applegate was filming what would become the final season of her Netflix series, Dead to Me. She has said she had to tell her cast and crew mid-production, describing the moment as one where everyone involved, including her, had to learn together what she would and would not be able to do physically going forward. In the years since, Applegate has spoken candidly and often about what MS has taken from her. She has said the disease is unpredictable and progressive, that she gained significant weight due to inactivity and medication, that she no longer recognized herself physically for a period, and that everyday tasks most people take for granted became genuinely difficult. She has openly discussed grieving the version of her life and her career that she expected to have. She has also said more than once that she doubted she would return to on-camera acting work, citing the physical demands of long shooting days as something she could no longer commit to. Applegate's first public appearance after going public with her diagnosis came on November 14th, 2022, when she received her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. She arrived using a cane and without shoes, later explaining that footwear had become uncomfortable given her mobility issues. Katie Seagal stood behind her at the podium for physical support throughout the speech, an image that circulated widely afterward. Applegate's remarks that day moved between humor and raw emotion. She told the crowd the day meant more to her than they could possibly imagine, recalling a memory from childhood of standing on that same street as a 5-year-old, staring at the stars on the sidewalk and wanting one of her own. She thanked the people closest to her, saying she didn't consider them just friends but family, people who looked after her every day and without whom she wouldn't know what to do. She became emotional addressing her daughter, Sadie, calling her the most important person in her world and thanking her for standing by her through everything. She also used her trademark dark humor to acknowledge her diagnosis directly, joking to the audience that she had a disease, gesturing at her bare feet, and telling them they were supposed to laugh. David Faustino and Katie Seagal both spoke at the ceremony as well, along with her Dead to Me co-star Linda Cardellini and the show's creator, Liz Feldman. Faustino specifically praised the genuine camaraderie the married, with children cast and crew shared during their years working together. More than a year later, on January 15th, 2024, at the rescheduled 75th Primetime Emmy Awards, Applegate made another significant public appearance. She walked onto the Peacock Theater stage with her cane, escorted by host Anthony Anderson, to present the award for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series. As she entered, the entire audience rose to its feet in a spontaneous standing ovation that lasted for close to a minute, an unusually long, sustained response by award show standards. Visibly emotional, Applegate thanked the crowd and then, in keeping with her reputation for coping through humor, joked that they were shaming her for her disability by standing, before adding a quip about her body not being the product of weight loss medication. She went on to tell the crowd they didn't need to applaud every single thing she did. She later revealed a more complicated feeling about that moment than the broadcast suggested. In a subsequent television interview, she admitted that despite the outpouring of support, she actually wanted to leave the stage shortly afterward because she was exhausted, and that her mind had immediately started questioning whether people were applauding her work or simply applauding the fact that she was disabled. She noted that in decades of performing, including her time on Broadway, she had never experienced a reception quite like it. In August 2024, Applegate and O'Neill sat down together for an extended conversation on her Messy podcast, giving both of them a chance to reflect at length on their history. It was here that Applegate made her clearest public statement about what O'Neill meant to her, describing him as someone who had essentially raised her and who was responsible, in her telling, both for everything she liked and disliked about herself. The two of them also used the conversation to describe how their relationship has evolved since the show ended. Applegate said that at this stage of her life, she genuinely enjoys long phone conversations with O'Neill, noting that she generally dislikes talking on the phone, but makes an exception for him, and that he is the person she speaks with most often by phone of anyone in her life. O'Neill, for his part, was largely warm and complimentary throughout, describing Applegate as a true professional and their years of shared scenes as consistently enjoyable. When the conversation turned playful, with Applegate asking whether he preferred her or his Modern Family co-star Julie Bowen as a TV daughter, O'Neill declined to pick a favorite and instead praised both women for being fundamentally good-hearted people, just in very different ways. Speculation about a full married, with children reunion has circulated for years, long before Applegate's diagnosis. Reports have surfaced periodically about interest in an animated revival of the series, with Applegate confirming in past interviews that all 4 original core cast members were attached to such a project in some capacity, though she said she couldn't share many details. Applegate's health has understandably reshaped what any future project involving the original cast could look like. She has said she does not currently see herself returning to a traditional live-action set with long, physically demanding shooting days, but has expressed openness to voiceover work as a way to keep working while managing her symptoms. She has also found a new kind of public platform through her podcast, which allows her to work and connect with audiences without the physical demands of a soundstage. Meanwhile, the bond between the original cast has continued to show up in public. Katie Sagal remained a steady presence at Applegate's side at major events following her diagnosis. Faustino has spoken warmly about their years together, and O'Neill's own on-record comments about a co-star who taught him nothing new was needed to enjoy their work together, about a professional he respected, about a father-daughter dynamic that carried over long after the camera stopped, paint a picture of friendship that never really required a reunion special to prove it was real. What makes the Applegate, O'Neill story compelling isn't a hidden secret revealed after decades of silence. It's the opposite, a friendship that both of them have described consistently, in their own words, across years of separate interviews, red carpets, and now a shared podcast episode. Applegate has said he raised her. She has said he was there through her mother's illness. She has said their current relationship, built on long phone calls at 52 years old, is one of the most important connections in her life. O'Neill has said, in his own understated way, that working with her was always something he genuinely enjoyed, and that in her he recognizes the same good-heartedness he sees in other people close to him. Applegate's public journey with multiple sclerosis has added new layers to that story, moments of visible vulnerability at the Walk of Fame and the Emmys, honest admissions about grief and physical decline, and a wit that has not dimmed even as her body has changed. Through it, her former married, with children, family, O'Neill included, has remained visibly present, whether standing behind her at a podium or sitting across from her on a podcast microphone, still calling each other, still checking in, nearly 4 decades after a 15-year-old walked onto a sitcom set and met the man who would go on to call her, only half jokingly, both entirely his fault and entirely his pride.